Yeah, they dropped charges and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But I don't blame them. You know, I have a reputation for not showing up, but that reputation will.
You cannot fake the funk. Sly Stone knew that before anyone else did. He built bridges between worlds that were never supposed to meet. Black and white, rock and soul, chaos and groove. He was not just making music, he was making history move differently. Sly Stone did not follow the rules because the rules were never written for someone like him. He rewrote them with every bass line, every horn blast. Every moment he put men and women, black and white, on the same stage as equals. And through it all, Sly listened. Not to critics or charts, but to the records that made his bones shake and his mind expand.
And Larry plays bass. He's a cousin of Cynthia Robinson, who plays trumpet.
These 7 albums were not background noise. They were blueprints for revolution. Albums that taught him rhythm could be rebellion and melody could be medicine. Sly never played it safe, and neither did the records he loved. Each one broke something open. Each one showed him that music could be more than entertainment. It could be a transformation. Before there was funk as we know it, before integration became a stage reality, before psychedelic soul had a name, there was Sly absorbing genius from every direction. These are the 7 rock albums Sly Stone called his favorites, and the reasons they mattered. Here are the records that shaped a revolutionary. If you love stories about the roots of genius, hit subscribe. Drop a comment and tell us which album changed your life forever. 7. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
What would you think if I sang out a tune? Would you stand up and walk?
Sly did not just hear Sgt. Pepper. He felt it rewired everything. When the Beatles dropped this in 1967, they were not making an album. They were building a world. Sly saw that instantly. He called it organized chaos with a smile.
It is not simplistic.
Well, there's nothing simplistic. The man
simple.
and his wife don't live together in perfect harmony all the time.
Every song bled into the next like a fever dream that made perfect sense. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, A Day in the Life, Within You Without You. These were not just tracks. They were dimensions. Sly was already experimenting with his own band, blending genres nobody thought could mix. But Sgt. Pepper showed him you could go further. You could turn the studio itself into an instrument. The Beatles were not playing by rules anymore. They were inventing new ones with every overdub and orchestral flourish. Sly respected that kind of fearlessness. He once said, "They made you believe anything was possible if you stopped caring about what was normal." What hit Sly hardest was the freedom in it. The album did not sound like trying to please anyone. It sounded like 4 men following their instincts into the unknown and trusting the ride. That courage lit something in Sly. Within months, he would begin crafting his own kaleidoscope. Dance to the Music and Stand were born from that same spirit. Sgt. Pepper was not just influential. It was permission to be limitless. 6. Live at the Apollo. This was not an album. This was a weapon. When James Brown recorded Live at the Apollo in 1962, he captured lightning in a bottle. Sly heard it and understood immediately what a live performance could really do.
When I look back on it, I realized I was writing blues, but I had a rock and roll.
It was not about perfection. It was about presence, about sweat and soul and a crowd losing their minds together. Brown did not just sing. He commanded. He preached. He transformed a theater into a church of rhythm. Sly was still learning his craft when this record hit his turntable. But it taught him lessons no studio could. The way Brown stretched a note until it hurt. The way he worked the audience like a maestro pulling strings. Please, Please, Please was not just a song. It was a theater, drama, desperation turned into art. Sly said Brown showed him that vulnerability could be power if you owned it completely. The groove on this album was pure instinct. No safety net, no second takes, just James Brown and his band channeling something raw and unfiltered. Sly absorbed that energy and carried it into every stage he touched. He learned that a performance was not about being perfect, it was about being present. about giving everything until there was nothing left. Live at the Apollo was the sound of a man refusing to hold back, and Sly never forgot that feeling. 5. Highway 61, Revisited.
They're selling postcards of the hanging.
Dylan went electric and the world split open. Highway 61, Revisited arrived in 1965 like a thunderclap nobody saw coming. Sly was paying attention. He heard Dylan take folk music and plug it into the future, like a Rolling Stone. Ballad of a Thin Man, Desolation Row. These songs did not care if you understood them. They dared you to try. Dylan was writing in riddles and making it sound like revolution. Sly respected the audacity of it. Dylan was not playing it safe or chasing radio hits. He was following his own vision into places that made people uncomfortable. That is exactly what Sly would do later with There's a Riot Going On. He saw in Dylan a blueprint for artistic freedom. You did not owe anyone an explanation. You owed them honesty, even if it was ugly or confusing or hard to swallow. The production on Highway 61 was raw and alive. It sounded like it was recorded in the middle of an argument. Guitars snarled, organs swirled. Dylan's voice cut through it all like broken glass wrapped in poetry. Sly once said Dylan taught him that words could be weapons if you sharpened them right. That music did not need to be pretty to be powerful. It just needed to be true. And Highway 61 Revisited was the truth without apology. 4. Tommy.
I overwhelm as I approach you, make your lungs hold breath.
Tommy was mad with a message. When The Who released this rock opera in 1969, they proved you could be loud and literary at the same time. Sly admired Pete Townshend's ambition. This was not just an album, it was a statement. A story told through distortion and drums and desperation. Pinball Wizard, I'm Free, See Me, Feel Me. Every song was a chapter in a larger vision. Sly understood that kind of thinking because he thought the same way. The Who did not just make music, they made moments. Tommy was theatrical and explosive and surprisingly tender. Sly heard in it the same thing he was trying to do. Take something familiar and twist it into something nobody expected. The guitars screamed, but the melodies stayed beautiful. The lyrics were surreal, but the emotion was real. That contradiction fascinated Sly. You could be experimental and still connect with people's hearts. What Sly took from Tommy was the courage to build something bigger than a single, to think in concepts and trust your audience to follow. A few years later, he would create There's a Riot Going On, an album that refused easy answers. Like Tommy, it was messy and brilliant and uncompromising. The Who showed Sly that rock could be more than 3 chords and a hook. It could be architecture. It could be art that kicked down doors and made you think while you danced. 3. Are You Experienced?
If you can just get your...
Hendrix did not play guitar. He possessed it. Are You Experienced dropped in 1967 and immediately rewrote the rules of what 6 strings could do. Sly heard Purple Haze and Foxy Lady and Manic Depression and felt the ground shift beneath him. This was not just music, it was electricity learning to speak. Hendrix made the guitar scream, cry, whisper, and explode all within the same song. Sly respected that kind of mastery mixed with madness. What struck Sly most was Hendrix's fearlessness. He was not trying to fit into any genre. He was creating his own universe where blues met psychedelia, met rock, met something entirely new. The sound was huge and intimate at the same time. Sly said Hendrix played like he was having a conversation with the cosmos. Every note felt intentional even when it sounded like chaos. That balance influenced how Sly approached his own arrangements. Hendrix also showed Sly that being a virtuoso did not mean losing your soul. The technical brilliance never overshadowed the feeling. Are You Experienced was raw and polished simultaneously. It had grit and grace. Sly carried that lesson into his own work, layering complexity without losing the groove. Hendrix proved you could be the best player in the room and still make music that moved bodies and minds equally. The album's production was revolutionary too. Tracks like Third Stone from the Sun felt like traveling through space while keeping your feet on the ground. Hendrix was bending reality with studio techniques nobody had mastered yet. That experimental edge spoke directly to Sly's own vision of pushing boundaries. That was the kind of greatness Sly chased his entire career. 2. Cloud 9.
The birds in the trees, my heart sings a rhapsody of love for you.
This was the sound of Motown growing up. Cloud 9 arrived in 1969 and changed everything Sly thought soul music could be. Norman Whitfield and Barrett Strong were producing with psychedelic edges and social consciousness. The Temptations were not just singing about love anymore. They were singing about reality. Runaway Child, Running Wild, I Can't Get Next to You. These songs had weight. They had something to say beyond the dance floor. Sly heard his own vision reflected back at him in Cloud 9. The album blended funk, rock, soul, and protest into something urgent and undeniable. The production was thick and layered, guitars fuzzed, bass lines throbbed, the vocals soared over top of it all with power and purpose. Sly said this was when Motown stopped being predictable and started being dangerous. And he meant that as the highest compliment. What connected Sly to Cloud 9 was the honesty in it. The Temptations were addressing poverty, addiction, and struggle while still making you move. That balance was everything Sly believed in. Music could be fun and serious. It could make you dance and make you think. Cloud 9 proved that soul music did not have to choose between entertainment and enlightenment. It could do both, and Sly spent his entire career doing exactly that. The title track itself was a masterpiece of contradiction. It dealt with drug escapism, but wrapped it in a groove so infectious you forgot you were hearing a cautionary tale. That is genius, making medicine taste like candy. Sly understood that approach deeply. 1. Here's Little Richard.
Dreamed I was arrested, charged with a crime. You've got to plead innocent.
Before everything, there was Little Richard. And for Sly Stone, that was the beginning of the universe. Here Little Richard came out in 1957 and set the world on fire. Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, Rip It Up. These songs did not ask permission. They demanded attention. Little Richard was screaming, pounding, and shaking with a wildness that could not be tamed. Sly heard that and knew immediately what freedom sounded like. Little Richard was not just a musician, he was an explosion. He wore makeup, screamed like a preacher, and played piano like he was trying to break it. He was black and queer and unapologetic in an era that wanted him to be none of those things. Sly saw courage in that. He saw someone refusing to dim their light for anyone. That lesson never left him. Be yourself louder than anyone expects. What made Here's Little Richard sacred to Sly was the pure joy in it. Even when the world was cruel, Little Richard made music that celebrated being alive. The energy was infectious. The rhythm was primal. Sly once said Little Richard taught him that music was not about being polite. It was about being honest, about letting everything inside you explode outward without fear. That spirit lived in every song Sly ever made. Little Richard lit the fuse. Sly kept the fire burning. Little Richard showed him that breaking rules was not just rebellious. It was necessary. The piano on these tracks did not accompany the songs. It attacked them. Every key hit like a declaration of independence. Sly absorbed that aggression and turned it into funk. He took Little Richard's fire and added layers of social commentary and musical complexity. But the core remained the same. Music as liberation, sound as freedom. Little Richard did not just influence Sly Stone, he gave him permission to become himself. Sly Stone never followed trends. He created them. But behind his genius was a listener who studied the masters. These 7 albums were not just favorites, they were fuel. Each one taught him something essential about courage, rhythm, and truth. Sly absorbed them all and built something entirely his own. If these stories resonated with you, share your favorite album in the comments and subscribe for more.